Have you ever felt fear so paralyzing that your own heartbeat sounded like a countdown to disaster? That was Cassidy's reality every single day. She thought she was just attending another suffocating gala with the monster she called a husband. She thought her life was over when she made a desperate run for it, diving under a banquet table to hide. But in the darkness, she didn't find dust or loneliness. She found glowing gold eyes. She found power. She bumped into the most feared Alpha King in existence, and that one mistake didn't end her life. It ignited a war that would burn the world down for her. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a fight for survival. The crystal chandeliers of the Fairmont Copley Plaza in Boston didn't sparkle for Cassidy. To her, they looked like jagged teeth waiting to drop. "Smile." Gavin hissed his fingers, digging into the tender flesh of her elbow. The pressure was precise, calculated to bruise but not break the skin. "You look like a funeral mute. This is the merger gala, Cassidy. Do not embarrass me." Cassidy forced the corners of her mouth up. It was a muscle memory by now, a reflex honed over 3 years of a marriage that had started with roses and ended with rules. Gavin Vance was a high-ranking beta in the local pack, a man who wore Italian suits to cover the rot in his soul. To the outside world, he was a charmer, a philanthropist, a rising star in the logistics industry. To Cassidy, he was the jailer who checked her odometer, monitored her heart rate via her smartwatch, and isolated her from every friend she ever had. "I'm sorry, Gavin," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the string quartet playing Vivaldi. "My head, the lights are bright." "Drink your champagne and shut up," he murmured lovingly, leaning in to kiss her cheek. To the onlookers, a sea of glitterati pack ambassadors and human politicians, it looked like an intimate moment between lovers. If you try to leave early like last time, you know what happens at home. The basement, Cassidy. Remember the cold. A shiver, violent and uncontrollable, raked down her spine. She remembered. The darkness, the damp concrete, the sound of the lock clicking. They moved through the crowd. The ballroom was suffocating, filled with the scent of expensive perfume and the underlying musky scent of wolf. This was a mixed event, a rare occasion where the supernatural elite mingled with human investors. Gavin was desperate to secure a contract with the Sterling Hale Corporation, a massive conglomerate rumored to be run by the most reclusive alpha pack in North America. "Stay here," Gavin commanded, parking her near a towering ice sculpture of a howling wolf. "I see Alderman Reeves. Do not move. If I look back and you aren't exactly where I left you, we leave. And you pay." He smoothed his tie and strode away, his charm turning on like a light switch as he approached the politician. Cassidy stood frozen, her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Run! The thought was a spark. Usually she stomped it out, but tonight felt different. Tonight, Gavin had mentioned permanent relocation to a pack compound in Alaska. If they went there, she would never escape. She would die in the snow, another tragic accident. She scanned the room. The exits were guarded by Gavin's security detail, burly men in ill-fitting tuxedos. The main doors were impossible. The kitchen staff entrance was on the far side, through a gauntlet of people. But 10 feet away, near the heavy velvet drapes of the east wall, was a long, deserted VIP table. It was set for guests who hadn't arrived yet, draped in heavy, floor-length gold cloth. Gavin was laughing at something the alderman said. His back was turned. Now. Cassidy didn't think. She didn't breathe. She took a step back, melting into the shadow of a pillar. Then another. She slipped her heels off, clutching them in one hand to silence her steps on the marble. She dropped to a crouch, moving with the desperate agility of prey. She reached the VIP table. She lifted the heavy gold cloth and rolled underneath, plunging herself into darkness. The space under the table was tight and smelled of floor wax. Cassidy curled into a ball, pulling her knees to her chest. She squeezed her eyes shut, counting her breaths. 1, 2, 3. She just needed to wait until the speeches started. When the lights dimmed for the presentation, she could crawl along the wall toward the service corridor. "You're breathing too loud." The voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder vibrating through the floorboards. It didn't come from outside. It came from next to her. Cassidy gasped, scrambling backward, her head cracking against the underside of the table. A sharp cry of pain escaped her lips before she clamped a hand over her mouth. In the gloom, 2 eyes opened. They weren't human. They were liquid gold, glowing with a faint, predatory luminescence that cut through the shadows. As Cassidy's eyes adjusted, she realized she wasn't alone. A man was sitting there. He was massive, his broad shoulders hunched slightly to fit in the confined space. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than her life, the fabric straining against thick muscle. He sat with his legs extended, relaxed, holding a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. He wasn't hiding. He was lounging. "Who?" Cassidy choked out terror, seizing her throat. "Please, don't hurt me." "I'm just hiding," the stranger finished. His voice was rich, laced with an accent she couldn't place, something old, perhaps European, mixed with the rough edge of the American West. "So am I, though I suspect we are hiding from very different things." He took a slow sip of his drink, the gold eyes never leaving her face. He didn't smell like the other wolves in the ballroom, musky and aggressive. He smelled like ozone rain on hot asphalt and expensive tobacco. It was an intoxicating, terrifying scent. Power. Pure distilled power. "Please," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "My husband. If he finds me." The man's demeanor shifted instantly. The lazy arrogance vanished, replaced by a stillness that was far more dangerous. He set the glass down on the carpet. He leaned forward, the gold light of his eyes illuminating the sharp angles of his face, a strong jaw, a nose that had been broken once and scars that spoke of violence. "Your husband?" He repeated the word, tasting like ash in his mouth. "Is he the one I heard threatening to lock someone in a basement earlier? The beta with the cheap cologne and the loud voice?" Cassidy nodded, trembling. "Gavin?" she whispered. "His name is Gavin." "Gavin." The stranger tested the name. "I don't like Gavin." Suddenly, heavy footsteps thudded on the marble outside their sanctuary. The gold cloth lifted. "Cassidy!" Gavin's voice was a snarling whisper. He was close, right outside. "I know you're around here. I can smell your fear, you stupid bitch. Come out now, and maybe I'll only break a finger." Cassidy stopped breathing. She curled tighter, waiting for the hand to grab her ankle for the pain to start. But the stranger moved. He didn't cower. He didn't scramble. He simply shifted his position, placing his massive body between Cassidy and the gap in the cloth. He looked at her, held a finger to his lips, and winked. Then he reached out a hand, large, scarred, and surprisingly gentle, and placed it on her shoulder. A shockwave of heat traveled through her, calming her racing heart instantly. It wasn't just comfort. It was a command. "Be calm." The cloth ripped open. Light flooded in. Gavin's face appeared red with rage, his eyes scanning the floor. "Found you." Gavin started reaching in blindly. His hand didn't find Cassidy. It found the stranger's lapel. The stranger didn't yell. He didn't strike. He simply growled. It wasn't a human sound. It was a subsonic vibration that rattled the silverware on top of the table. It was the sound of a tectonic plate shifting. It was the sound of a king. Gavin froze. His eyes widened as they adjusted to the darkness under the table. He saw the glowing gold eyes. He saw the sheer size of the man. And then he saw the crest pin on the man's lapel, a silver wolf entangled with a crown of thorns. Gavin's face went pale. The blood drained from him so fast he looked like a corpse. Alpha," Gavin stammered, snatching his hand back as if he had touched a hot stove. I didn't know. I was looking for my wife. She is occupied," the stranger said. His voice was soft, terrifyingly polite. "We are having a very important conversation about the structural integrity of this table, and you are interrupting. Sir, forgive me." Gavin was shaking now. A beta challenging an alpha was bad. A beta interrupting this alpha seemed to be a death sentence. "I'll wait." "No," the stranger said. "You will leave. You will walk out of this ballroom. You will get in your car, and you will drive away. If I see your face again tonight, I will remove it." "But my wife—" The stranger leaned forward just an inch, but the threat filled the small space like mustard gas. "She isn't your wife right now. She is my guest." Gavin scrambled back, the cloth falling back into place. Cassidy heard his footsteps retreating fast, stumbling, terrified. Silence returned to the space under the table. Cassidy stared at the stranger. She should be running. She had just traded one monster for another, but when she looked at him, she didn't feel the urge to flee. "Who are you?" she breathed. The man picked up his drink again, swirling the liquid. A smirk played on his lips. "My friends call me Damon," he said. "My enemies call me the Reaper." He turned those gold eyes on her, and the intensity stole the air from her lungs. "But you little mouse, you can call me the man who is going to ruin Gavin's life. Start talking. Tell me everything." Cassidy didn't know where to start. Silence had been her survival strategy for so long that words felt foreign heavy. But Damon didn't push. He sat in the darkness with her, his presence, a solid, unshakable wall against the world outside. "He tracks my phone," she blurted out, her hands fumbling with the smart device on her wrist. "If he leaves, he'll see I'm still here. He'll wait for me outside the perimeter. He always does." Damon set his glass down. He reached out and took her wrist. His fingers were hot, calloused. With a movement too fast for her eyes to track, he crushed the expensive smartwatch between his thumb and forefinger. Glass shattered, metal twisted, and the device went dead. He tossed the debris aside like it was a crumpled wrapper. "He tracks nothing," Damon stated. "Now tell me, why did you choose this table?" "I just wanted to hide," she stammered. "Fate," Damon mused. "You chose the only table in this entire hotel that is booked permanently by the Blackwood Pack." Cassidy gasped. The Blackwood Pack wasn't just a pack. They were the authority. They were the enforcers of the treaty, the wolves who policed other wolves. They controlled territory from Chicago to Seattle. And their alpha— "You're Damon Blackwood," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The Alpha King, the Wolf of Wall Street, the man who supposedly killed his own uncle to take the throne at 18. "In the flesh," he agreed. And I am currently hiding because if I have to listen to one more politician ask me for funding for a wolf integration program, I am going to shift and eat the buffet table. Whole. A tiny hysterical giggle bubbled up in Cassidy's throat. She clamped a hand over her mouth, shocked. She hadn't laughed in years. Damon's eyes softened. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a sleek black card. "You need a way out, Cassidy," he said, using her name for the first time. It sounded like a prayer on his tongue. "I have a private elevator waiting in the kitchen. My car is out back. I can take you anywhere you want to go. A shelter, a friend's house. The airport." Cassidy shook her head, tears spilling over. "I have no friends, no money. He controls my bank accounts. If I go to a shelter, he'll buy the staff. He's done it before." Damon looked at her, really looked at her, analyzing the bruises she tried to hide with makeup, the thinness of her wrists, the terror etched into her posture. A low growl built in his chest again, but this time it was protective. "Then you come with me," he said simply. "With you. I have a penthouse here in the city. Secure. Guarded by wolves who would die before letting a beta like Gavin within a mile of the door. You stay there tonight. Tomorrow we figure out the rest." "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would you help me? I'm nobody. I'm just a human woman who made a bad choice." Damon leaned in close. The space between them crackled with electricity. He brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his touch sending shivers down her neck. "Because, little mouse," he whispered, "when you crawled under this table, you didn't smell like fear. You smelled like rosemary and vanilla." He inhaled deeply, his eyes fluttering shut for a second. "You smell like something I've been looking for my entire life. And I'd be damned if I let a piece of garbage like Gavin Vance touch what belongs to me." Cassidy didn't understand the "belongs to me" part. It sounded possessive, dangerous, but right now danger was her only shield. "Okay," she whispered. "Good." Damon moved. "Stay close. If anyone looks at you, you look at the floor. If anyone touches you, I remove their hand. Understand?" "Yes." Damon kicked the gold cloth aside and stood up. He towered over the room, 6'5", of pure aggression, wrapped in civility. He reached down and pulled Cassidy up. The ballroom was still full, but a hush fell over the nearby tables as Damon Blackwood emerged. He didn't acknowledge anyone. He wrapped a massive arm around Cassidy's waist, pulling her flush against his side. He radiated a field of "do not approach," so strong it was almost physical. They moved toward the kitchen service doors. Waiters scrambled out of their way. Just as they reached the swinging doors, a voice called out, "Mr. Blackwood, leaving so soon?" It was Alderman Reeves, the politician Gavin had been schmoozing. He was smiling, oblivious to the tension. Damon stopped. He didn't turn his body, just his head. "Alderman," Damon said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I'm afraid I have a pest control issue to attend to." "Pest control?" Reeves looked confused. "Yes." Damon's eyes scanned the room until they landed on the far exit where Gavin was lurking, peeking through the glass, too terrified to enter, but too possessive to leave. Damon locked eyes with him. "I found a rat, and I intend to exterminate it." He pushed Cassidy through the kitchen doors, leaving a room full of stunned socialites and one terrified husband in his wake. The ride to the penthouse was a blur of neon city lights and silence. Damon drove a matte black Aston Martin that purred like a sleeping beast. He didn't ask Cassidy where she wanted to go. He simply drove. For the first time in 3 years, Cassidy sat in a passenger seat without someone gripping her thigh to keep her from jumping out. She stared at her hands, watching the tremors that refused to stop. The car descended into a private underground garage, the heavy steel gates clanging shut behind them with a finality that made Cassidy flinch. "Breathe," Damon said. It wasn't a suggestion. He killed the engine and turned to her. In the harsh fluorescent light of the garage, he looked even more terrifying. The scar running through his eyebrow seemed deeper, his jaw tighter. But when he unbuckled his seatbelt, his movements were slow, broadcasted to ensure she didn't panic. "We are safe here," he said, his voice dropping an octave. The security in this building was designed by ex-Mossad agents and reinforced by pack magic. Gavin could bring an army, and he would still die in the lobby. "He won't bring an army," Cassidy whispered, her voice raspy. "He'll bring lawyers. He'll bring the police." He's charming, Damon. He twists things. He'll tell them I'm mentally unstable. He has files. Doctors he paid off to say I'm bipolar. Damon's eyes flashed with that molten gold fire. Let him bring his lies. I own the truth. He escorted her to the private elevator. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Blackwood Tower, overlooking the Boston Harbor. When the doors opened, Cassidy stepped onto plush charcoal carpet. The apartment was a fortress of glass and steel, modern cold, but undeniably secure. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city she had been a prisoner in. "Sit," Damon instructed, pointing to a massive leather sofa that looked like it cost more than her childhood home. Cassidy sat on the edge, ready to bolt. Damon disappeared into another room and returned a moment later with a first aid kit and a bottle of water. He knelt before her, the Alpha King, on his knees. The sight was so jarring, Cassidy almost forgot how to breathe. "Give me your foot," he said gently. She hesitated, then extended her leg. She had kicked off her heels in the ballroom. Her stockings were torn, and the soles of her feet were bruised and dirty from the run. Damon took her foot in his large, warm hand. He didn't grimace. He uncapped a bottle of antiseptic and began to clean her skin with a tenderness that contradicted the violence she had seen in his eyes earlier. "Why?" Cassidy asked again, the question tearing out of her. "You don't know me. I'm a liability. Gavin Vance is a beta, but he has connections to the Sterling Hale pack. If you keep me, you start a war." Damon paused, a cotton swab hovering over a cut on her heel. He looked up, locking eyes with her. "Do you know what we are, Cassidy?" he asked. "Not the fairy tales, the reality." "Wolves," she said. "Powerful, territorial." "Territorial," he echoed with a dark chuckle. "That is a mild word for it. We are biological imperatives wrapped in human skin. When a wolf finds their mate, biology rewrites itself. Logic dies. Self-preservation vanishes." Cassidy's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the stories whispered at galas by starry-eyed she-wolves. The mate bond. The mythical connection that tied two souls together. But that was for them, not for her. She was human. Just a human trophy wife. "I'm human, Damon," she whispered. "I can't be that." "Can't you?" Damon tossed the cotton swab into the bin. He moved closer, sliding his hands up her calves to rest on her knees. The heat radiating from him was intense, seeking to chase away the bone-deep chill Gavin had left in her. "Tell me, Cassidy, when you were under that table, did you feel fear when you saw me?" "Yes," she admitted. "At first," he corrected, But when I touched you, when I spoke, I felt safe, she whispered, like I had come home. Damon nodded, his expression grim, yet satisfied. That is the bond. It is rare for a human to feel it so strongly, which means your bloodline is not as mundane as you think. But that is a mystery for another day. For now, you need to understand one thing. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the sofa on either side of her hips, boxing her in. But it wasn't a cage. It was a shield. Gavin is not your husband anymore. By the laws of the pack, by the ancient laws that predate this city, he forfeited his claim the moment he abused you. And the moment I found you, a new claim was established. You're claiming me? Cassidy asked, her voice trembling. Like property? No. Damon growled, the sound vibrating in his chest. Like a queen. I am not claiming you to own you, Cassidy. I am claiming the right to burn the world down if anyone touches you again. He stood up abruptly, the intensity becoming too much for the room to hold. The guest room is down the hall, second door on the right. It has a lock. I have the only key, and I will give it to you. You lock it from the inside. I cannot enter unless you open it. Sleep. We have a war to fight in the morning. He dropped a heavy brass key into her palm. Cassidy stared at it. For 3 years, locks had been used to keep her in. Now she was being given the power to keep the world out. She watched Damon walk toward the balcony, pulling a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He looked like a titan bearing the weight of the sky. Damon. He paused, not turning around. Thank you. He didn't speak. He just lit his cigarette, the flame illuminating the hard line of his jaw, and stepped out into the night. Cassidy didn't think she would sleep, but exhaustion was a heavy blanket. She woke up screaming. The dream was always the same. The cold basement, Gavin's perfectly polished shoes descending the stairs, the click of the lock. She sat up, gasping, her body drenched in cold sweat. It took her a moment to realize she wasn't in the basement. She was in a room that smelled of lavender and expensive linen. Sunlight was streaming through the heavy curtains. She scrambled out of bed and ran to the door. Locked. She had locked it. She fumbled with the latch and threw it open. The smell of coffee and bacon hit her. It was so domestic, so normal that it made her knees weak. She walked tentatively into the living area. Damon was there, but he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him at the kitchen island was a man with sleek silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, typing furiously on a laptop. Another man, this one built like a tank with a shaved head, stood by the door, arms crossed. Damon looked up from a stack of documents. He was wearing a casual grey t-shirt that clung to his biceps and sweatpants. He looked dangerously comfortable. Morning, Damon said, sliding a mug of coffee across the granite counter. Did you sleep a little? Cassidy lied. She pulled her oversized robe, one she found in the closet, tighter around herself. Who are they? This is Elias. Damon pointed to the man with glasses. My gamma and the best lawyer in the state, and the grumpy boulder by the door is Jax, my head of security. Jax nodded once, his face impassive. Elias didn't look up from his screen. We have a situation, Mrs. Vance, Elias said. His voice clipped and professional. Cassidy, she corrected automatically. Just Cassidy. Cassidy, Elias amended. He spun the laptop around so she could see the screen. Gavin didn't wait for the lawyers. He went to the press. Cassidy stared at the screen. It was a live feed from a local news station. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Alpha abducts wife of prominent businessman." On the screen, Gavin was standing outside their suburban mansion, looking devastated. He had tears in his eyes. "She's not well," Gavin was saying to the microphones, his voice cracking perfectly. "Cassidy has struggled with mental health issues for years. She had an episode at the gala last night. I was trying to get her to the car to get her help when Damon Blackwood, a man known for his violence, snatched her. I'm terrified for her safety. She needs her medication. Please, if you're watching this, Cassidy, just come home. I love you." Cassidy felt the blood drain from her face. "He's lying. I don't take medication. He made that up." "We know," Damon said calmly. He walked around the counter and stood behind her, his hands gripping the back of her bar stool. "He is playing the victim. It is a classic narcissist move. He wants to force public opinion against me, so the council interferes." "The council, the Werewolf High Council," Elias explained. "They hate attention. Gavin is making this a human spectacle. He hopes the council will order Damon to return you to avoid exposing our world further." "Will they?" Cassidy asked, looking up at Damon. "Will you have to give me back?" Damon leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. "The council can try. If they send in forces, I will send them back in pieces." "That's romantic alpha, but legally problematic." Elias sighed, closing the laptop. "We need a counter-narrative. Gavin has filed a kidnapping charge with the Boston PD. They are on their way here now." Cassidy dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, hot liquid splashing everywhere. "The police, they'll arrest you. They'll take me back to him." "Jax," Damon barked. The large man moved instantly, not to attack, but to clean. He grabbed a towel and began wiping the mess. "Leave it," Damon commanded Jax, then grabbed Cassidy's hand, pulling her away from the broken shards. "Listen to me. You are not going back. Elias has already drafted a restraining order and a divorce petition. But we need evidence, real evidence, not just your word against his." Cassidy looked down. "I don't have bruises, not visible ones. He knows how to hit where it doesn't show. Or he uses the cold, the isolation." Damon's grip on her hand tightened. "The watch." "What tool?" "The smart watch I crushed," Damon said. "It was tracking your heart rate, right?" "Yes. He wanted to know if I was stressed or running." Damon looked at Elias. "Can we pull the cloud data?" Elias smirked. "Already did, boss. I hacked the server 10 minutes ago. We have 3 years of biometric data. We have spikes in heart rate consistent with extreme terror at 200 a.m., 4:00 a.m., times when she should be sleeping. We also have GPS data showing she was locked in the basement for days at a time. The temperature sensors on the watch recorded ambient temps of 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Cassidy stared at Elias. "You can see all that. Technology is a double-edged sword, Cassidy," Elias said. "Gavin used it to leash you. We're going to use it to hang him." The intercom buzzed, a harsh metallic sound. "Police are in the lobby," Jack stated, checking his earpiece. "Detective Miller. He's human, but he's on the Sterling Hale payroll. He's not here for a chat." Damon's face hardened into a mask of stone. The playful alpha of the morning vanished. The Reaper returned. "Let them up," Damon said. "Damon, no." Cassidy grabbed his arm. "If you fight the police—" "I'm not going to fight them," Damon said, walking over to a closet near the entrance. He pulled out a blazer and shrugged it on instantly, transforming from casual lover to billionaire CEO. He turned to Cassidy. "You need to trust me," he said. "This is going to get ugly. Gavin is going to try to break you. He is going to try to make you look crazy. But you have something he doesn't have." "What? You have the king." Damon grinned a feral, terrifying expression. "Now go change. There are clothes in the closet my sister's size. Put on something that looks like armor. You are not a victim today, Cassidy. Today you are the woman who brought down the Vances." Cassidy ran to the bedroom. She found the clothes sleek business attire high-end fabrics. She chose a black tailored suit that fit surprisingly well. She looked in the mirror. She looked pale, tired, but her eyes, they were different. They held a spark of defiance. She walked back out just as the elevator pinged. 3 police officers stepped out. Leading them was Detective Miller, a man with a greasy comb-over and a sneer. "Damon Blackwood." Miller announced, his hand resting on his holster. "You're under arrest for the kidnapping of Cassidy Vance. Mrs. Vance, step away from him. You're safe now." Miller moved to grab Cassidy's arm. Before he could touch her, a low, menacing growl filled the room. It didn't come from Damon. It came from Jax. The security guard stepped forward, blocking Miller's path. "Touch her," Damon said, from where he leaned against the kitchen island, sipping a fresh cup of coffee. "And you lose the hand, Miller. Do you have a warrant?" "I have probable cause. The husband reported her kidnapped." Miller shouted, his face reddening. "This is an active hostage situation. It's not a hostage situation if the hostage is drinking espresso," Elias piped up from the sofa. Miller glared at Cassidy. "Mrs. Vance, tell us the truth. Did this man force you to come here? Did he threaten you?" The room went silent. Everyone looked at Cassidy. This was the moment. She could feel the phantom sensation of Gavin's fingers on her neck. If she spoke against Gavin, the retaliation would be severe if she ever fell back into his hands. She looked at Damon. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her with pride. He was waiting for her to find her own claws. Cassidy took a deep breath. She stepped out from behind Jax. She stood tall, smoothing the lapels of her black blazer. "Detective Miller," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I am not a hostage. I am here of my own free will. And if you try to take me back to Gavin Vance, I will sue the Boston Police Department for aiding and abetting a domestic abuser. I am filing for divorce. And Mr. Blackwood is my legal counsel's primary witness." Miller blinked, stunned. He had expected a weeping, confused woman. He got a wall of ice. He says you're off your meds," Miller stammered. "And I say he's a liar," Cassidy said. She walked over to Damon and stood next to him. "Now get out of my house." Damon wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He looked at the detective with a smirk that promised retribution. "You heard the lady," Damon said. "Unless you want me to call the commissioner, I believe we have a golf game scheduled for Sunday." Miller turned purple. He knew he was outgunned. He signaled his men. "This isn't over, Blackwood. The husband has rights. The husband has a grave waiting for him," Damon whispered, too low for the humans to hear, but loud enough for Cassidy. As the police retreated into the elevator, the adrenaline crashed out of Cassidy. She sagged against Damon. "You did it," Damon murmured into her hair. "You were magnificent." "He won't stop," she whispered. "Gavin, he has leverage. He didn't just hurt me, Damon. He has my sister." Damon froze. "You said you had no family." "I lied." Cassidy admitted, tears spilling over. "I had to protect her. She's in a care facility. Gavin pays us for it. If I leave him, he stops paying. She gets thrown out on the street. She's sick, Damon. She needs round-the-clock care. That's why I stayed. That's why I let him do it." Damon turned her around, gripping her shoulders. His eyes were blazing. Where is she? St. Jude's Recovery Center, in Vermont. Damon looked at Jax. Prep the chopper. We leave in 10 minutes. Damon, Cassidy asked. We are going to get your sister, Damon said firmly, and we are going to move her to the best private facility money can buy. Gavin Vance's wallet does not control you anymore. My vault does. But if we leave the city, Gavin will know. He'll send people. Let him send them. Damon snarled a true wolfish grin spreading across his face. I haven't had a good hunt in years. The helicopter cut through the grey skies over Vermont like a blade. Inside the cabin, the noise was deafening, but the headset Damon had placed over Cassidy's ears created a pocket of silence. He reached across the small space and laced his fingers with hers. His hand was an anchor. Below them, the St. Jude's Recovery Center appeared a sprawling Victorian estate, isolated by acres of dense, snow-covered pine forest. It looked picturesque to the untrained eye. To Cassidy, it looked like a mausoleum. Jax, Damon's voice crackled over the headset. What's the reception looking like? Hostile, Jax replied from the cockpit. We have 4 heat signatures on the roof. They aren't maintenance crew. They're armed, and they smell like wet dog. Rogues. Cassidy stiffened. Rogues were wolves without a pack mercenaries who sold their claws to the highest bidder. Gavin had escalated. Put us down on the lawn, Damon commanded. If they fire, return it. The chopper banked hard, descending rapidly. Snow swirled in a blinding vortex. As the skids touched the frozen grass, Damon unbuckled. He didn't look worried. He looked ready. Stay behind, Jax, Damon ordered Cassidy. Do not stop moving until you get to your sister's room. They burst out of the helicopter into the biting cold. Immediately, a gunshot cracked through the air, chipping the paint near Cassidy's head. Damon didn't flinch. He let out a roar, a sound that wasn't human, a sound that shook the snow from the trees. He moved with a speed that blurred the air, launching himself toward the roof access where the shooter was hidden. Jax grabbed Cassidy's arm. Move. They ran toward the main entrance. The heavy oak doors were locked. Jax didn't bother with a key. He slammed his shoulder into the wood, splintering the frame and sending the doors flying inward. Inside the lobby was silent. Too silent. The receptionist was missing. Room 304. Cassidy panted, her breath misting in the cold air of the unheated hallway. 3rd floor. They took the stairs, ignoring the elevator. On the 2nd landing, a man in scrubs stepped out. He held a syringe, his eyes wild. You can't be here, he screamed. Mr. Vance said no visitors. Jax didn't break stride. He backhanded the orderly with enough force to send him skidding across the linoleum floor. We aren't visitors. We're an eviction notice. They reached the 3rd floor. It was a high security wing. The door to room 304 was reinforced steel. Lily, Cassidy screamed, pounding on the metal. Lily, it's me! There was no answer. Stand back, Jax warned. He pulled a small explosive charge from his tactical vest, slapped it on the lock, and detonated it. The door blew open with a sharp crump. Cassidy rushed in. The room was sterile, smelling of bleach and decay. In the center, on a narrow bed, lay a woman who looked like a ghost of Cassidy. Lily was pale, her skin almost translucent, hooked up to an IV drip that was pumping a clear, viscous liquid into her arm. Oh, God! Cassidy sobbed, ripping the IV out of her sister's arm. Lily, wake up! Lily's eyelids fluttered. Her eyes, usually a bright green, were dull and clouded. She looked at Cassidy, struggling to focus. Cass, she croaked, you shouldn't be here. The bad man, he's watching. I know, Cassidy cried, wrapping her sister in a blanket. "We're leaving. I'm taking you home." "Not home," a smooth, cold voice said from the doorway. Cassidy froze. Standing in the ruin of the doorframe was Dr. Aris Thorne, the facility director, but he wasn't alone. Flanking him were two massive men, stripped to the waist, their skin rippling as they fought the urge to shift. "Mr. Vance pays a premium for silence," Dr. Thorne said, adjusting his glasses. "Lily saw things she wasn't supposed to." Cassidy. "She saw Gavin dealing with the rogues. She knows where the bodies are buried. Literally." Cassidy stood up, placing herself between the wolves and her sister. "You drugged her to keep her quiet. We drugged her to keep her compliant," Thorne sneered. "And now we'll have to sedate you too. Gavin will be pleased to have a matching set." The two rogue wolves stepped forward, growling. Jax stepped up, but he was 1 against 2. "Jax," Cassidy whispered. "I can take one," Jax grunted. "The other one is yours to dodge." The rogue on the left lunged. Jax met him mid-air, a collision of muscle and bone. They crashed into the hallway, a mess of claws and teeth. The second rogue smiled, revealing elongated canines. He stalked toward Cassidy. "Come here, little girl," he hissed. Cassidy looked around for a weapon. Nothing. Just a metal bed-de-pan. She grabbed it, trembling. The rogue laughed. He crouched to spring. Suddenly the wall behind the rogue exploded. Debris and plaster rained down as a massive body plowed through the drywall from the adjacent room. It was Damon. He was covered in dust, his eyes glowing like twin suns. He didn't just look like an alpha. He looked like a god of war. He grabbed the rogue by the throat before the creature could even turn his head. "You touched her door," Damon growled, his voice vibrating the floorboards. "That was your last mistake." With a sickening crunch, Damon snapped the rogue's neck and tossed the body aside like a rag doll. Dr. Thorne shrieked and tried to run, but Damon was faster. He grabbed the doctor by the back of his lab coat and slammed him against the wall. "The sedative," Damon barked. "What is it?" "Wolfsbane, mixed with ketamine," Thorne blubbered. "It suppresses memory." "Fix her," Damon ordered, "or I will inject every vial in this hospital into your jugular." Thorne scrambled to a medicine cabinet, his hands shaking violently as he grabbed a reversal agent. As Thorne administered the shot to Lily, Damon turned to Cassidy. He was breathing hard blood, not his own, splattered on his shirt. He reached out, cupping her face. "Are you hurt?" "No." She shook her head, adrenaline coursing through her. "But Gavin knows. He knows we're here." "Let him know," Damon said, looking out the shattered window at the snowy landscape where swans were beginning to wail in the distance. "I want him to know I'm coming. Pack your sister up, Cassidy. The war just started." 3 days later, the Blackwood Tower was a fortress under siege. Not by armies, but by lawyers and media. Gavin Vance had played his final card. He had called for a tribunal. In the werewolf world, a tribunal was an ancient court used to settle disputes between high-ranking members. Gavin, despite being a beta, had used his connections with the corrupt Sterling Hale pack to petition the council. His claim that Damon Blackwood had stolen his legal property and violated the treaty by attacking a human care facility. The tribunal was held in the Grand Hall of the Boston Pack House, a neutral ground. It was a cavernous room filled with the elite of the supernatural world. Cassidy stood next to Damon. She wore a dress of midnight blue silk chosen by Damon because it was the color of the Blackwood crest. She held her head high. Lily was safe, hidden in Damon's private clinic, with round-the-clock guards. She was recovering her memory, slowly returning. At the other end of the room stood Gavin. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, wearing a neck brace to garner sympathy. He smirked when he saw Cassidy. The High Elder. A woman named Matriarch Voss banged her gavel a ceremonial staff of ironwood. "We are here to adjudicate the claim of Gavin Vance against Alpha Damon Blackwood," Voss intoned. "Mr. Vance, speak." Gavin stepped forward. He played the part of the grieving husband perfectly. "Elders," he began, his voice wavering, "this man, this beast, broke into my wife's sanctuary. He kidnapped her. He assaulted medical staff. He stole my sister-in-law, a woman who requires specialized care. I only want my family back. I want justice." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many of the older wolves disliked Damon's aggressive expansion tactics. They were looking for a reason to humble the young king. "Alpha Blackwood," Voss said sternly. "How do you plead?" Damon stepped forward. He didn't bow. He didn't humble himself. "I plead guilty," Damon said loudly. The room gasped. Cassidy grabbed his arm, panicked. "What was he doing, guilty?" Damon continued pacing the floor, of rescuing a woman from a torture chamber. Guilty of saving her sister from being chemically lobotomized to hide Gavin Vance's crimes. "Objection," Gavin's lawyer shouted. "Hearsay." "Is it?" Damon signaled to the back of the room. "Open the doors." The heavy doors creaked open. Elias walked in. He was pushing a wheelchair. In the chair sat Lily. She looked weak, but her eyes were clear, burning with a fire that matched Cassidy's. "This is Lily Vance," Damon announced. "And she has a statement." Gavin's face went white. He took a step back. "She's mentally incompetent. You can't listen to her." "Let her speak," Matriarch Voss commanded. Lily took a shaky breath. "Gavin didn't pay for my care," she said, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the hall. "He paid for my silence. 3 years ago, I went to his office to surprise him. I heard him on the phone. He was selling shipping routes to the rogue packs. He was letting them smuggle silver weapons into the city to kill alphas." The room erupted. Dealing with rogues was a crime. Smuggling silver that was treason. "Lies!" Gavin screamed, losing his composure. "She's lying. Look at her. She's a junkie." "I have the ledger," Elias interrupted, holding up a thick black book. "We found it in the safe at St. Jude's. It details every payment Gavin made to the rogues, and every payment he made to the Sterling Hale pack to look the other way." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The murmurs turned to growls. The wolves looked at Gavin, not as a victim, but as prey. "But that is not all," Damon said, his voice cutting through the noise. He turned to Cassidy. "Come here, my love." Cassidy walked to him. Damon took her hand and turned to the elders. "Gavin claims she is his wife, but the moon goddess disagrees." Damon rolled up his sleeve. On his forearm, a golden mark was glowing, a complex rune that had appeared over the last 3 days. "A mark," Voss gasped. "A true mate mark." Damon turned Cassidy's hand over. On her wrist, a matching golden rune shimmered faintly against her skin. "She is not human," Damon revealed. "She is of the Selene bloodline, the Keepers. That is why she survived his abuse. That is why she found me. Gavin knew this. He was draining her energy to boost his own status, to make himself feel like an alpha." The revelation stunned the court. The Selene bloodline was a myth humans blessed with the spirit of the moon capable of strengthening a pack simply by existing. Gavin had been keeping a living battery prisoner. Gavin realized he had lost. The court, the law, the public opinion, it was all gone. His eyes darted to the exit. He pulled a silver knife from his jacket, smuggled in, and lunged. Not at Damon. He knew he couldn't beat Damon. He lunged at Cassidy. "If I can't have her, no one can," he shrieked. Time seemed to slow down. Cassidy saw the blade coming. She saw Damon moving, but he was too far away. She didn't cower. She didn't hide under a table. 3 years of rage, of fear, of silence coalesced into a single point in her chest. Cassidy screamed. It wasn't a scream of terror. It was a scream of power. A shockwave of pure white energy erupted from her body. It hit Gavin like a freight train. He was thrown backward, flying through the air and smashing into the stone pillar of the hall. The knife clattered away. He slumped to the floor, groaning his bones, shattered by the force of her rejection. Silence fell over the hall. Cassidy stood panting, her hands glowing with fading moonlight. Damon walked over to Gavin. He looked down at the broken man. "I told you," Damon whispered, his gold eyes burning. "She isn't yours." Damon looked at Matriarch Voss. "Judgment. Guilty," Voss said, her voice trembling with awe. "On all counts, the punishment is death." "No," Cassidy said. Everyone looked at her. "Death is too easy," Cassidy said, walking over to stand over Gavin. She looked down at the man who had tormented her. He looked small now, pathetic. "He loves power. Take it away. Strip him of his assets. Strip him of his name. Exile him to the rogue lands without a weapon. Let him survive on his own." Damon smiled. It was a cruel, beautiful smile. A fitting end, to live as the prey he always treated you as. 2 months later. The balcony of the Blackwood penthouse was no longer a place of solitude. It was a garden. Cassidy had filled it with night-blooming jasmine and roses. She stood at the railing looking out over Boston. It was a cold night, but she wasn't cold. Strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind, pulling her into a hard, warm chest. "You're thinking about him," Damon murmured, resting his chin on her shoulder. "No," Cassidy said, leaning back into him. "I'm thinking about the gala tonight. Are you sure I have to give a speech? You are the Luna of the Blackwood Pack." Damon chuckled, kissing her neck. "And the CEO of the Vance Logistics Group, now that we acquired it. People want to hear from the Queen." Cassidy turned in his arms. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a deep, abiding peace. She reached up and traced the scar on his eyebrow. "I hid under a table to save my life," she whispered. "And you found a king," Damon finished. "No." Cassidy smiled, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted of forever. "I found myself. You just held the flashlight." Damon growled softly, lifting her up effortlessly. "Then let's go inside, my queen. I believe we have a celebration to attend to." As he carried her inside, the golden moon hung heavy over the city, watching over the mouse who became a lion and the wolf who learned to love her. And that is the story of Cassidy and Damon. It's a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments of our lives are just the tunnels leading us to our brightest destiny. Cassidy thought she was weak, but she was carrying a power inside her that just needed the right spark to ignite. Gavin got exactly what he deserved, eaten alive by the very world he tried to manipulate. What did you think of that ending? Do you think Cassidy should have let the council execute Gavin? Or was exile a worse punishment? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance, revenge, and wolf shifters, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. We have a spicy mafia romance coming up next week that you do not want to miss. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay wild.